Politicians, if they want the young vote, they need to be sincere and they need to be issue driven and issue focused. Gone are the days where you could give someone a stove and they vote for you for the next 20 years.
Welcome back to Pushing Your Peers podcast, the number one podcast in the region for living a progressive and happier life. Today, we are tackling a major conversation: youth, politics, and the future of leadership. Joining me is Kristoff Strachan, a powerhouse advocate for climate justice, youth leadership, and political reform. We are diving into the disconnect between young voters and political parties, why Gen Z and Millennials feel disillusioned with the system, and the urgent need for real engagement and change. If you've ever questioned the future of politics, this is the episode for you. Sit back, relax, and let's get ready to push some peers. First of all, Kristoff, welcome to Pushing Your Peers podcast. I'm really excited to have you simply because the Turks and Caicos Islands recently came off its silly season, and I know the Bahamas is entering its silly season. So
Yep.
we both have a shared interest in this topic today, and that's gonna be youth participation in politics. And my first question to you is, why is it important for youth to participate in politics or even be
I,
politically aware?
I think it's important for you to be politically aware because at the end of the day, even if we feel as if our voices aren't heard, very often our voices are disregarded, pushed to the side, completely ignored. And that is the truth. The reality is, at the end of the day, politics affects us. So even if they are ignoring us, we still need to be aware of what they're doing and what they're saying, because what they're saying and what they're doing affects all of us. It affects how our countries operate. It affects every aspect of our lives so long as we live within the country. So we have to be aware. We can't say, oh, they ain't doing nothing for me, so I don't care. And that's a valid feeling. It's a valid feeling when your government, you feel like your government isn't doing anything for you. So why should you do anything for them, i.e., support them? But at the end of the day, their actions affect us. So we have to get to a point where as we realize that we have to make our voices heard because these same politicians that we have today who are old and in their 50s and 60s and they're in their 70s, when they got their start, they were in their 20s and 30s.
Right.
When they were pushing for all of the rights of, the colonies or the territories or whatever, these were young 20 somethings, 30 somethings. So don't mind them ignoring us. They understand the value and the strength that we have because they were in our shoes and they know the power that we have and the power that we have to affect change and meaningful change. So that's why we need to be aware.
You know, you mentioned something a few times. You talked about youths being ignored. You know, what do you, based on which you've the conversations you've had, why do you think that happens? You know, you have campaign season where it seems as though all you're hearing from both parties or the multiple parties is the youth, the youth, the youth. And as soon as they become elected, it's like we're on the backbone burner. Why is that?
I think that's one part of our culture. Our culture regionally, we are ageist, uh, we are ageist region. And that probably stems from colonialism. And the first time I realized that that may have stemmed from colonialism was when I was reading The Scarlet Letter. And the Scarlet Letter is based on um, colonial New England in Massachusetts or whichever colonial British city it was. But what stood out to me when I was reading it was that they were dealing with something with the customs, and they didn't want to go to the young customs officer, even though he probably could have solved the problem. They wanted to go to the older one. And I was like, oh, so this is a British thing that they give to us that we holding on to this day. And we understand that youth voices matter and they need to be heard. And we understand that when it comes to elections and voting, they could help us get into power, but we don't genuinely care to support them because we have this mentality where we say in the Bahamas, you sit small till your name call, and usually your name don't get called till you're old. So we exploit you because we need your votes. And we saying all the things that we know you want to hear. We're saying we're gonna tackle youth unemployment and we're gonna tackle youth crime and we're gonna do better in the school systems and we're gonna do better in this area and do better for tertiary education. All of these things that people cry about. Young people in home ownership. We're going to get more young people in home ownership. But then when you get in power, who get in the house? The 40, 50-year-old supporter who cousin is the minister or who Annie is the permanent secretary. You know?
I always like to talk to Bahamians because I feel like both of us have that shared struggle. In the Bahamas, there seems to be this switching, the seesaw effect in the political system, where one time it's this party, and the next time,
Yeah.
okay, you all had your turn. It's my turn now. And in the Turks and Caicos Islands recently, we've had for the first time in quite some time a consecutive government win consecutively, right? But let's talk about the Bahamas briefly, and then we'll transition to Turks. Why are we seeing a seesaw effect when it comes to Bahamian politics?
I think the biggest issue when it comes to Bahamian politics, and you've seen this seesaw, this flip-flopping going back and forth, is because people are not pleased with the party when the party is in power. And there are no viable third-party options to vote in. So whereas we're seeing the F&M had their 5 years, the F&M did not live up to their promises. We do not want the F&M for another 5 years. There's no other option other than the PLP because the third party options, quite frankly, don't make sense. We had we had an instance where there was a third party option that was making sense when they first formed, I think back in 2010, the DNA. And people were very hopeful and optimistic about the DNA because it's like, wow, this is a breath of fresh air. We look like we getting somewhere, and then they became foolishness. So at the end of the day, when it comes to time to election, it's all well and good for people to say choose a third party option. Why? Why would I do that? When these third party option people, I kid you not, in the last election, we had a leader of a third party who said that he had the cure for COVID. He had it.
Okay.
Wh- Scientists didn't even have it yet. But you, sir, you have it. And you leading a political party and vying to be prime minister of my country. They say these foolish things and then they say, "Oh, they don't want better." They do want better, but there's no better option. So you stick with what you know. You're tired of the PLP, so you go to the FNM. FNM do foolishness, you're tired of them, you go back to the PLP. And it's been that flip-flopping since 2002 because Bahamians know what they want. And a lot of people keep trivializing to say, oh, Bahamians just can't please, you can't please Bahamians. No, Bahamians know what they want, but they're not being pleased. That's the issue. So they go to the alternative option who offers them what they want, but then they don't get that. You come offer me to fix my roof. You want to fix my roof? You come out my yard. Come on my yard, because you were supposed to be fixing my roof. You won't do that. Joe down the road say he can fix my roof. Joe come. Joe, look, he talking a good game. He cut couple piece of plywood on. He looked like he getting somewhere. Then all of a sudden, the roof still ain't finished. Joe, you gotta go. Where Peter gone? I know I run Peter away, but call Peter back. And
I
that's
get
what it
it. I
is.
get it. I get it, Christoph. You. I love the examples you use. It was humorous, but at the same time, it's so serious. And I want to transition now to Turks and Caicos. You know, we have a government that has run consecutive terms, but this victory here, the second victory, it was a landslide victory. I mean, if you've been
Hmm.
keeping up with it, right? And
It
I
was.
just feel like the second party right now is completely gone. If I'm being honest, when we talk about the I don't want to call them names because I ain't trying to get in trouble, but I think we know.
Well, let me call it. They can't do nothing to me. I ain't takes and I ain't belongers, so they can't do nothing to me.
Yeah, so I think we're seeing in Turks and Caicos a need for a third party, which is completely
Hmm.
different from what we're seeing in the Bahamas. So we now have a youth population here that's growing politically aware. There seems to be a cry for a third party. Based on what you've experienced in the Bahamas, what should be the steps to take in assembling a third party that would make sense to the people and not be a rubbish by the time election day comes?
I think. Ooh. Okay, so let me for context, we have this burgeoning third party over here. It's the Coalition of Independents. And it's a paradox because your name is a coalition of independents. You claim all y'all is independent, y'all don't align with none of the parties, that's why y'all is the better choice. But you made a party with a mission statement and values and a doctrine and a leader and all of that. But that's neither here nor there. We have that coalition of independents, COI now, and they are growing um, with traction because they are their leader is charismatic, very charismatic. He know how to talk to the common man. And the reality is the COI exploits all of the desperations of the Bahamian people. So what you need is a third party that is willing to highlight all of the issues but not exploit you. Because the COI is not the better option. But every issue, they go after it like a vulture. And they're saying, look at what the PLP is doing. The FNM did this too. And then the people are saying, yeah, that's why we need to get rid of the two of them. Who are we replacing them with? The same man who said that he had no desire to be in politics or prime minister. So we need a
Mhm.
third party with that type of mentality, whereas they could go after the 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 desperations of the people and the needs of the people without exploiting them, because at the end of the day they understand that this is what we need as a people. And I'm not just saying all the things that you want me to say or I think you want to hear, but we need that third party who will come out and say, look, we have this over dependency on tourism, the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos. This is what we will do to address it and diversify our economy to bolster other industries that we can have, because historically we had viable industries that we could bring back, that we could introduce as new. We need the type of leaders that have vision and truly want progression, because the progression affects them. That, I think, that's a big part of the issue with our politicians in both the Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas. A lot of our politicians, they talk about the issues, even the third parties. They talk about the issues, but at the end of the day, the issues don't really affect them. So they talk about it, but they didn't, they didn't, they didn't care that much to fix up, the public school system because they sent a nature in a private school. So we need more people who have these issues, these everyday issues that affect them personally, that are driving them towards progression. Because when we look at our historical political leaders who formed these parties and who formed these third parties, that's what the case was. The issues
Mm.
affected them. So the issues were what were pushing them to do better. Now it's, I there. Catch up.
Indeed. Thank you so much for sharing that, Christoph. In the Turks and Caicos now, I'm going to talk more about us. We saw our lowest voter turnouts being between the ages of 18 to 30. When you look at all the age groups with the statistics, that age group was the lowest. And I think we would term them Gen Zers. Based on
Yeah.
your conversations you've had with these young people, why do you think they're not really interested in politics compared to all the other age groups?
Gen Zs and millennials, I think, are the two most disillusioned group of politics because, the smoke and they see past the smoke and mirrors.
Mm.
Those two groups, it's no longer a matter of supporting parties blindly because this what I grow up, this all I know, my people is this, so I is this. Young people are more issue driven. And when those issues are not being solved and tackled, they have no interest in being part of the political process. Because what really is the point? And I think Gen Zs in particular are more they are more bold with expressing their disinterest than millennials because a millennial will say, anyway, I'm mad, but let me still go vote. Or a millennial would say, well, maybe if I could get involved, I could try change one or two things. The Gen Z says, y'all been doing this for decades and decades. Screw y'all. And I have to give props to the Gen Zs because they are firm in not supporting what does not support them. If it don't work for me, I ain't supporting you. You have some millennials who are like that, but a lot of the millennials, because they grew up with the boomers telling them, well, it's your right. What you mean you ain't voting? It's a privilege. You have to vote. People fought for your right. That's true. But I tell people, and a lot of older people especially get upset when I say this, in a two-party system like we have in most of our Caribbean countries, voting is not an effective means to an end when no option is better than the other or the other option is barely better than the other. By being silent, by showing that we are displeased, that's being more loud and powerful than voting people out. Because when you vote them out, you still bringing in the same people that you're still displeased with. But if you show that you ain't supporting nobody, somebody gonna have to get their act together. Because as the voting block continues to grow in the next 5 years, when the Gen Z and the millennials have a larger voting block, what's going to happen? When you have more people who are still disgruntled and they still have that mindset, you ain't do nothing for me, so I ain't do nothing for you.
Mm.
Don't come talk about, yeah, wear this shirt, put this, come to the rally, nothing, because they're not trying to hear that. So somebody is going to have to get their act together because at the end of the day, these people love votes and they need the votes. And when they see that they are outright not getting the vote, none of them, they're gonna be forced to change their acts. So young people are just disillusioned because young people have we live in an era where we haven't been seeing progress for young people. We haven't been able for a lot of young people to live the lives that our parents live. Whereas you in your late 20s, you in your early 30s, and you saying it's still too expensive to have children. But then when you
Yes.
think of, but then when you think about your parents was 22, 23, 24 with two, three children, living life, paying down on their house,
Summer vacations.
summer vacations. And you here trying to figure out, hmm, it's a Friday night. I wonder if I could get two bears with my crock conch or if I could get one bear with my crock conch. That's the life of the young person now. Or you say, hey, go get my conch salad. I know if I could splurge tonight and get a conch salad and a collect. You know? I know if I could do that. I probably could just get either tree collect or a kong salad. But I can't be living life on the edge, balling, doing all these things. Whole time when our parents was our age, our parents, they was living life.
I telling you. Christoph, this is serious. Even though I'm laughing, this is a very serious
It's
conversation.
serious. It's serious. But if you like the old people say, if you don't laugh, you'll cry. You could cry.
Indeed.
That's all you could do. You guys make sport of it. That's all you could do.
No, I want to talk about again Turks and Caicos, right? Last election, we saw a voters turnout of 76%. This
Mhm.
election, we've seen a decline, right? And again, I mentioned the Gen Zers not coming out to vote. I think it was about out of the 6,500 persons that voted in Turks and Caicos. Yes, that's actually the number of persons that decided our elections. I know that's very low. We had probably less than 500 or 700 Gen Zers that showed up. It seems as though they're not interested, right? The government looking at our stats. What should they do now to appeal to the young people? Let's say there is a minister listening who wants to make that difference. What should they do to turn things around?
The main thing for young people, be sincere. Young people, they're not like the generations before them, where you could put couple dollars in the political shirt, in the party shirt, and put that in their hand, and they be satisfied with that. Or you show up to somebody funeral or somebody wedding, and they be satisfied with that. Young people don't care. Me personally, I care if you come to my Grammy funeral. I care if you come to my Grammy funeral, because what that doing for my constituency? At the end of the day, the constituency road need to fix, dock need to fix, airport need to fix. You showing up to people um wedding and funeral and having don't mind you. That you need, that's good. It's good to be in the community, but you need politicians if they want the young vote, they need to be sincere and they need to be issue driven and issue focused. Gone are the days where you could give someone a stove and they vote for you for the next 20 years.
Mm,
Or Christmas come around, you give them ham and turkey. Oh, child, my MP give me ham and turkey. That's my MP. Okay, but nobody in your constituency have a job.
mhm,
And those are the things that young people are looking at. And the young person isn't going to say, well, don't bring the ham, don't bring the turkey. But the young person is saying, do all of that. But what else you doing? What else you doing? On the smaller islands in both the Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas. Schools need teachers. How are you working to fix that problem? Because you can't just say Grand Turk and Provo or Freeport and Nassau are fine with teachers, and the smaller islands don't have those It's almost like it's a luxury for them to have a teacher in every grade for every subject. The smaller islands. How are you telling me, as someone from South Caicos, how are you telling me that you are going to maintain this clinic throughout the year? How are you doing that? Because as a young person, I live here, and it shouldn't be that Provo have it all. As a young
Right.
person in the Bahamas from Exuma, how are you maintaining the clinic in Exuma so that people don't have to go to Nassau? You saying that there's a strain on resources in Nassau, but you're not fixing the resources so that people don't have to utilize the Nasuvian resources and add to the strain. So young people are looking at that. Young people are looking at, why do I have to leave my small island to go to the larger island to go work in one hotel?
Mm.
You telling me that there's a brain drain in both of our countries? They saying that there's a brain drain. Why are young people leaving? You talk about the brain drain, you talk about young people leaving, but you don't address the issues. So that's what these politicians need to do. They need to be issue focused, issue minded, issue driven to say, not just talk about it, but to actually solve it.
Right.
And those are the things that will move young people to want to support you. You saying that this town on Middle Caicos is a fishing village, but the dock in disrepair for years and years. How
Mm.
you could say, oh yeah, the people is fishermen, but they ain't have no dock? Are you saying, oh yeah, the people in West End, there's fishermen, but they ain't have no dock? So you're saying you want to celebrate these people in these industries and you want to keep these industries alive, but you're not giving them the infrastructure. And then you have young people who will say, I don't necessarily want to be a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer. I don't mind being a fisherman. You
Right.
have young people who will say, I don't mind going into agriculture, but the
Mm.
infrastructure is not in place.
Christoph, thank
So,
you so much. No, you were saying something?
no, no, no.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that, man. I think we need more time for you because you have dropped so many gems, and you do it in a way that is both humorous and makes us want to listen. And I thank you for being an advocate also for the common man, because the things you talk about are things that you will often hear on social media, which is why I was very happy that you agreed to come on, because I know you're very active on social media. So you are well aware of our issues as young people, both in the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos Islands. So I want to thank you for coming on. Now, the second half of the show, Pushing Your Peers podcast. This is where you push your peers. Any words that begins with the letter P that has been transformational to your journey. It can be one word or multiple words. You now have the floor to push your peers.
Boy, I ain't gonna lie. I ain't gonna lie. From you say we have to do this, I mean, take it. I say, Lord, P word, P, what? I say, you know, and I thought of two things. One was a word, and the other was a song. And I know other Caribbean countries sing the song in primary school. I know if you all used to do it in your assembly, but other Caribbean countries know it. I am a promise. I am a possibility. I am a
Right, for
great
sure.
big bundle of potentiality.
Yeah.
So, I thought about that because as young people, it seems discouraging, the way we look at not just politics at home, but politics internationally. When we look at what's going on in the States, the global powerhouse, and what's going on in all these other countries, and you're seeing these wars and genocide and like climate change is on our shores. You have to remember, God instilled a promise in you to be, you are a promise. You are a possibility, a promise to be whatever you need to be. And He will give you the potential to live up to all those possibilities because He made you a promise. And throughout all of that, my personal P is perseverance. Like I
Oh
say,
yeah.
I recently graduated. I graduate from university with my bachelor's degree in December, a month shy of turning 30. My bachelor's degree, my first degree. Mind you, I was trying since I was in grade 12, since I was 17. And I get this one bachelor's degree till I was almost 30. But that's perseverance because it was roadblock after roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. It was stumble here, hurdle here. Plenty times I wanted to give up, plenty times I tried to give up. But even in the midst of all those times when I tried to give up, God reminded me that He made a promise for me to be, for me to have the potential to live out any possibility that I desire. But you have to have perseverance. So those are my P's. And when things looking rough, remember that you are a promise, you are a possibility, you are a promise with a capital P.
Yeah.
You are a great big bundle of potentiality. And you know, these little things that they teach us as children, it seemed like, oh man, we gotta sing this again in assembly, or we gotta sing this again in Sunday school. But then when you become an adult, and you realize these things and you think about these things and you think about your life or you think about other people's life and other people's story and you say these things are really powerful. So
Indeed.
those are my P's that I am pushing: perseverance, promise, possibilities, and potentiality.
Chris, you have been phenomenal. I thank you for singing to my audience too. And you might be the first guest who sung to my audience. So thank you for giving us that Sunday school note, I would call it. Uh Before we wrap up, I have two more questions. This
Mm,
one here is a spin-off,
mm.
right? So the spin-off question is, what is the weirdest profession you ever wanted to explore or get into?
You say the weirdest?
The weirdest one.
I wouldn't say it's weird, but it's a bit like extreme. When I was young, I was trip over. Well, I still trip over aviation. You know, I got this little plane tattoo. I still want to get my pilot's license, but more than just being a pilot, I love building planes when I was a child out of Lego. So all my Lego sets all over the house was planes, and every room in the house was a different island, a different airport, and I wanted to be an aerospace engineer.
Oh wow.
And I tell people that, and they be like, okay, well, I guess I can see that because you smart, but you know, it's just out there. It wasn't normal. Ain't nobody, you know, from the Caribbean growing up to say they want to be a rocket scientist. But I doubt I really wanted to. You know, I'm still young.
You are.
If at 50, God provide the opportunity for me to go and become a rocket scientist at 50, if that's where I end up, that's where I end up because it's still in my heart. But
Right.
I'd say that's probably like the most peculiar. 'Cause it's not really like weird, but it's definitely not a normal career that the average child says that that's what they want to do. And from primary school, high school, anybody asks me, an aerospace engineer, that's what I wanted to do. So yeah.
Well, I know you will accomplish it if it's in your heart. You already
Yeah,
say how you persevere for that bachelor. So imagine what
yeah.
you're willing to do for the yeah, for sure. So I know you'll do well, Chris. I know you'll do well. And again, I just want to congratulate you once again for that huge accomplishment. That's nothing light. You know, going through university, man, right. It's a challenge. You know, so
It was a
and you
big
wrap and
challenge.
right. And I also want to give you an opportunity now to, I don't know if you have any movements or anybody you want to plug in, but this is your opportunity now to do that. And also say your final words.
Okay. Um, you know, I mentioned earlier about things looking discouraging for young people, but there was a time when those who govern us, things looked discouraging for them. For the women who sit in politics or the women who are married to those in politics, when they were in their teenage years and their 20s and they couldn't vote because only the men could vote. That was discouraging for them. They had to find their voice and they had to fight. They had to fight for the suffrage movements to get women those rights. And in our colonial struggles, people like Pinlin and Jags, these were young people who saw issues that they found their voice and they had to fight. So I think instead of silencing ourselves as young people that more and more of us are doing, we have to learn that this is now our opportunity to redo and recreate everything that the old people before us has done, in the sense that this is now our turn to speak up and raise our voices about the issues that exist. Because it don't make sense saying, Lord, I so hungry. You could
Mhm.
do something. You could go out and find a way to make a couple dollars. So it don't make
Yes.
sense complaining about the issues, but not doing anything about it. So it's discouraging, but we have to find a means as young people, not just in the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos, but throughout this region, because it's being echoed regionally to recreate the things that the old people said when they were young and do what the old people did, do all of those revolutions and those protests we learn about in high school. These are young people. This
Mhm.
is the stuff we need to start be doing. We may not necessarily have to be as physical with protests and stuff, but we can learn to make our voices heard and fight for our issues. We can't just sit idly by and say, I'm not going to say anything about it, even though I'm mad. You mad? Let them know you mad. And tell them you can stay mad till the problem is solved. And no, your ham and turkey is not going to solve the problem.
Right. Thank you so much, Chris, for coming on, sharing those words, speaking life into the young people. Uh, it's been a pleasure having you on Pushing Your Peace podcast. And yeah, man, I
It was a
really
pleasure. It
enjoy.
was a pleasure being here.
I telling you, it's a whole lot. And of course, you're always welcome back. And
I
maybe we could
appreciate
talk
that.
about
I, I
and
looking
maybe we could
forward
talk
to it.
about and we could talk about, post elections, your silly
Yeah,
season.
yeah.
Yes, but Chris, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Chris, political activist. I would call him. I'm not sure what he identifies as, but I would call him a political
You
activist
know,
for living.
it's the name that's being thrusted upon me for years and years that I've been running away from. So I guess at some point I'll have to stop being Jonah and running.
There
So
we go. But very vocal on Twitter. You can hit him up personally and get a lot of great insights. Of course, thank you for tuning in to Pushing Your Peace podcast, and we'll see you next week.